Welcome into the doors of psychic experience and star people. Thank you for tuning in. Ask and you will be given what you asked for. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. For everyone who asks receives. Anyone who seeks finds. If only you will knock, the door will open, and the truth within your higher self will be revealed to you. Come with us now and go with us where angels come, and so can you.
Welcome to our show, Psychic Experience and Star People. This show is being presented by the First Spiritualist Church. This is the 127th show that we've been doing. And the church is a church where angels come, and so can you, every Sunday. I am Reverend Doris Horvath, the past pastor of the church. I am also the co-producer for this show. And I want to tell you the contents of this show are not only metaphysical, but also spiritual and educational. Now, on another plane, if you're looking for a church that is unusual than others that you've experienced, the First Spiritualist Church has very high vibrations and a very different approach to religion. We believe in life after death and the continuation of spirit and communication with spirit. Our church is also a healing and teaching church. Every Sunday morning we have special speakers. We start off with aura healing and a meditation. And after the church, we have metaphysical, spiritual readings for as many people as we can. Afterwards, we meet in Johnson's Hall, and we have cookies, tea, and coffee, and sometimes we have a big potluck. We also have classes and workshops. Now, if you're looking for something different, you might find the First Spiritualist Church, 1 block south of University Avenue, is a good place to go. A little bit later here in the show, you will find the phone number for the church if you want to make a call. We have a lot of very interesting guests on our show. They come from a lot of different sources. The one tonight, his name is Jim Shan. He is a very accomplished astrologer. And I'm going to ask him to say hello to you right now so you can get an idea of who he is.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. And I know our audience would just love to see what you look like, too. So they know who's talking. Now, as usual, I'm going to start everything here by telling our audience about you by reading the bio that you have given me. And that's what I will be doing right now. Jim Shan is an astrological teacher and consultant, specializing in relocation and travel, among other types of work. He is a certified astrology professional through the International Society for Astrological Research. Jim attended Cornell University, studying cultural anthropology and linguistics. Starting in 1969, he began the serious study of astrology, which he continued while he worked in information technologies for many years. From 1989 to 1997, Jim was a technical astrologer handling the most difficult questions and orders at the world's leading computerized astrology company. Today, he has his own private practice with clients all over the world, including businessmen who use his services for timing important actions, such as incorporating companies and opening new locations. Now, I'm going to be asking Jim some questions, and we do this because this is how you get to know him better. Now, to start here, Jim, how do astrologers cast horoscope charts?
Well, you have to have not only the date of birth and the time of birth, but also the place of birth. You You need the latitude and longitude to calculate the chart, and you need to know what kind of time zone was in use. And you want the most accurate birth time possible.
Yes.
Normally from the birth certificate is regarded as pretty good.
Okay. Now, you said something about doing relocation astrology. What does relocation astrology have to do with the actual astrology for a person or a business or whatever?
Well, normally we do them for people, not for businesses or other entities. And what's involved is that the sky at a particular moment looks one way as seen from here, and from a different spot on the Earth, the sky looks different, because planets that have risen in one place will not have risen in the other. Planets that have set in one place will not have set in the other. So you get a different chart. And it turns out in practice that, for example, I was born in Chicago. I have a relocation chart for San Diego, which is the same as my natal chart, but rotated to show what the sky looked like as seen from San Diego at my moment of birth. And it turns out that that is very relevant. It actually describes a lot about my life in San Diego.
Okay, so that's why you moved here?
No, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way.
Oh.
I became a relocation specialist because I have Neptune, the planet of the ideal and perfect, in my 4th house of residence, which meant I was looking for the perfect place to live.
Ah, near the water.
So I have been in 39 countries, and San Diego is the place that I chose for practical reasons afterwards, and then I study the reasons.
Okay. Now, let's go a little bit further here with, can astrologers predict the future?
To some extent, yes. We can predict what kinds of issues a person is going to be dealing with during a given period. It would be extremely foolish to try to predict detailed events. This could get you into serious trouble, actually.
Yeah, with a person that just made a prediction for May the 21st.
Yeah, there are too many ways that a particular set of planetary influences can manifest. And unless you know the person's life in detail and you know exactly what's going on for them, it's very, very foolish to try to be specific and predict events. But you can certainly see what the issues will be in a general sort of way.
Maybe you just give them some general ideas where they might be happy.
Right.
Okay. I hear that you predicted the delay in the results of the U.S. presidential election in 2000. Now, how did you do that?
Well, this was a very interesting year because we had a big astrological conference earlier in the year, and they had a panel with 16 astrologers on trying to predict who was going to be president. And 8 of them said it was going to be Bush, and 8 of them said it was going to be Gore. So obviously things were a little out of control.
For sure.
So I just sort of sat on my opinions for a while, and eventually, not too long before the election, I realized that the most significant thing going on was that Mercury was going to change direction on election day.
Was it going retrograde?
It was going direct.
Oh, direct.
Yeah, it was going direct on election day, shortly after the polls would have closed in most of the country. Now, Mercury retrograde, every astrologer knows, tends to mess things up.
Yeah.
Mercury stations, that's the point where they change direction, tend to mess things up. And Mercury rules paperwork.
Okay.
And things like counting votes and ballots.
Communications.
So I sent out an email to about 50 astrologers that said I thought it was possible that we might have a delay in the presidential election results because of counting of ballots, challenges, and possible apparent ties in some states. And one of the people that I sent it to put it out on a major website. And so it became a widespread, well-known prediction. And then I was actually interviewed for a TV show here in San Diego on election night. Good. Or the day before, I forget which. But anyway, it turned out that I was right, but I had no idea it was going to take 35 days. But it was. It was 35 days from the election before we knew who the next president was going to be. I thought maybe a couple of weeks or something.
35 days. I remember that. It seemed like it was never going to happen. All right. Now, what does travel have to do with astrology? I'm sure everyone would like to hear about that.
Yes, I have some clients who love to travel who come to me regularly every year for travel suggestions. And the way it works is this. There are charts called return charts in astrology. I use what are called precession-corrected returns, which means I return the sun, for example, to where it comes to its exact natal position with respect to the fixed stars every year, which is going to be more or less on the birthday, give or take a day or two.
Okay.
And I look at the chart for the place where the person is living. And it's going to be either a very good chart, a very lousy chart, or it's going to be somewhere in the middle. If it's a very good chart, I tell the person, stay put for a week before the solar return, don't leave town. If it's a terrible chart, I say, I will find you one or more places where you can take a week-long vacation before the solar return, and that will then change what's coming up for you in the entire next year, most particularly the first 3 months, but actually the chart does govern 12 months. And if the chart is an in-between so-so chart, I might look at it and say, well, it could be greatly improved by going such and such a place. Or I might not. It depends on the person's budget, too.
Or I guess.
Yeah. Now, I'm about to go to Alaska for my solar return in June.
Oh, why would you choose Alaska?
Because of the chart. The way the chart works out, in order to get a fairly decent chart on dry land, any place that I can afford to get to, the best place is Ketchikan, Alaska this year for me.
Are you going to go by train or plane?
No, I'm going to fly, and I'm going to see my sister in San Francisco for 3 days. And then I'm going to go to Ketchikan for 8 days.
Do you know someone that lives in Alaska?
Not a soul.
You just want to see what it's like?
No, I've been to Juneau for a solar return a few years ago, and it's quite beautiful.
Okay. Well, you're going to see the whole world, aren't you?
I've been in, like I said, I've been in 39 countries and 45 states.
Okay. Well, then, how do businessmen use electional astrology for making their important decisions?
Electional astrology may sound like it has something to do with political elections, but it doesn't. It refers to electing or choosing a time to do something important.
Okay.
Now, I was in real estate for a while, and I used to try to get my clients to see properties at times that were astrologically favorable, to make offers on properties at times that were astrologically favorable. If it was a seller, I'd want to sign a listing agreement at an astrologically favorable time. I have a billionaire client overseas who's been working with me for about 10 years, and he said that every business we've worked on together has been successful.
Well, that's
wonderful. Dozens and dozens of businesses. He incorporates companies in various countries from time to time, and he opens new locations of his businesses from time to time, and he consults me on the right times to do those things.
It sounds like he's lucky he knows you.
Well, yeah, and he's also a very lucky guy generally, as you might expect for a billionaire.
Oh, well, he had to have been very successful, else he wouldn't be a billionaire, too.
That's right.
Okay. Well, this next thing that we're going to talk about is very interesting to me. How about the timing of personal events such as marriage? That must draw a lot of attention.
Well, this is, again, electional astrology. Sometimes somebody will want to have a marriage chart picked, so it's the best possible chart. Now, I should say that picking a good marriage chart will not save a bad relationship. I do not encourage people doing shotgun weddings and getting astrologers to pick good charts for them. Doesn't work. But assuming the relationship is sound and it has some history behind it, and you have good reason to expect it to last, then you can pick the time and place for the wedding. And in an average year, there might be only 2 or 3 days on which a serious astrologer would regard as having decent charts for a wedding. It's very, very few and far between.
What if one of the person's, well, what if a marriage is done on one of the person's birthdays? Like maybe to get married on a man's birthday or a woman's birthday, is that a good idea?
Not necessarily. The aspects on the person's birthday are not guaranteed to be particularly good for a marriage.
Okay.
There are certain characteristics that you look for in a marriage chart, and like I say, you're lucky to find 2 or 3 days in the year where you have that kind of chart.
Okay. I remember my teacher, Gina Ciaglio, said that if one of the partners was a logical thinker and one was a creative thinker, they would have issues about everything because they couldn't see eye to eye.
Of course. I agree with Gina.
That's one of the things I look for.
Not surprisingly.
Oh, I actually saved my next door neighbor's marriage by telling her about that. They're still married. That was 7 years ago. I see that you are the author of an annual calendar, which shows opportunity periods. And please show us the book that we're going to be talking about here. Now, what are the opportunity periods?
An opportunity period is a time when the moon is making only good aspects, aspects being angular relationships between the planets. We want to avoid times when the moon is applying to hard aspects with difficult planets, and so on. And so this is all based on Western classical astrology. It took me 30 years to develop this system, but having put it together now, I was speaking on the system in 2003, and the annuals editor from a major publisher approached me and said, we'd like you to work on this this feature, adding it to our calendar. So it's been added to this particular calendar since the year 2006 in every edition.
So this is Llewellyn's Daily Planetary Guide.
Right. Daily Planetary Guide. This one is 2011. The 2012 is probably on its way to the printer now.
Okay. And you had a part in writing that book.
I am one of the authors credited because I do the opportunity periods for the calendar. There are several other people that write articles in this book as well.
All right. Okay. Well, I have a question here that will sort of confuse people a little bit. What is Horary astrology, if I said that right?
Horary, yes. Horary would be a British pronunciation. Americans would tend to say Horary.
Okay.
Yeah, H-O-R-A-R-Y. It's about asking a question. A client calls me up and says, you know, I really want to know the answer to this question. And I look at my watch and I say, okay, I just understood your question at whatever time it is, 1:13 p.m. or whatever, on such and such a date. And where are you calling from and what city? So I'm going to use their location and my time, the time when I understood the question clearly. Or if the person is astrologically aware, they may themselves write down the time when the question occurs to me. Either way, you're going to get the right answer because there are only a couple of answers you can get. Generally, it's either yes or no, except for certain special kinds of horary, like finding lost objects, which is a whole other ball game.
Oh, yes, it is.
Yeah, I've done a few lost object horaries and one missing person horary, which was an unfortunate case where the man died in his car after going off the road. But the astrology described perfectly what happened.
Okay.
And by the way, when you do horary astrology, you cease to believe that the universe is as described in physics class in high school. It doesn't work that way, folks. Sorry.
Okay. All right. What is Karmic astrology?
Karmic astrology?
Yes.
Well, in Eastern religion, of course, we have the concept of karma, which in Sanskrit simply means action. And the Sanskrit word for consequences is vipaka. So when you act, you create consequences. Karma generates vipaka. People who believe in past lives want to look at their charts with an eye to understanding how they got here.
Okay.
And also trying to avoid creating bad karma for the future. But generally speaking, when you talk about karmic astrology, you're looking at a chart that has some heavy issues, and you're speculating as to how this person might have come about the necessity to deal with these particular heavy issues.
Do you look at the 12th house or the intercepted signs to broadcast some of that? forecast some of it?
I would certainly look at the 12th. I would look at the moon's nodes, wherever they fall. I would look at so-called afflictions, hard aspects, difficult aspects between any planets in the chart.
Okay.
But the basic rule that many people seem to adhere to is that everything that you experience in this life is the result of things that you did in past lives. And every person that you encounter in this life is somebody that you had already encountered in some other life, even if it's somebody that you're just passing on the street without even speaking to.
I believe that.
And I'm a Buddhist, and Buddhists basically believe we've been around since beginningless time, time without beginning, even before the Big Bang. There was another universe before that.
I'm sure there was another planet thousands of years ago. Well, I'm going to ask you about these 3 big planets that have moved out of signs into other signs, such as the one that I think we've got enough time for. What do you feel about Uranus moving into Aries out of Pisces, where it was for 8 years?
Well, in Pisces, Uranus was stirring up people's subconscious. Pisces is a totally emotional sign, and Uranus is an intellectual planet, but it's a planet of change. And so people were reacting primarily emotionally, but it was constant stirring. Now that it's gone into Aries, Aries is a sign of physical action, a fire sign. And we can already see that just since it changed a couple of months ago, we can see more stuff happening in the world news. The pace of events is quickened. It already seemed to be quickening, but Uranus moving into Aries has made it even faster.
Yeah, it's like double Mars.
Yep, and as a matter of fact, we had, I think, as many as 6 planets in Aries at one point in the last few weeks.
Yes.
And this is not fun necessarily.
No, it's not, especially for an Aries and a Libran.
Yes, people are going over the edge a bit. Pluto, of course, moved a couple of years ago into Capricorn, and it's going to stay, I think, for something like 17 years. I forget the exact time, but it's a long time. And Pluto and Uranus are square to each other off and on throughout the next few years. And since they're both planets of deep change, this is going to kick up a lot of stuff. The last time we had a hard aspect between Uranus and Pluto was in the 1960s, when they were conjunct in Virgo.
Oh my.
And so it lasted about 7 years then. It's going to last at least 7 years now. And they say that if you lived through the 1960s, if you were really there, you wouldn't remember it. But I'm going to say that some of us do remember it.
I remember it. I was having a lot of fun. That's just joking.
And it was, you know, it was a rough time for many people. There were good things happening, but a lot of people were suffering, as people are always suffering. And things were upsetting. The establishment didn't like what was going on. A lot of people wanted rebellion. They wanted revolution. We're going to have a repeat of this in many ways.
All over the world.
Yep.
Now, how do you feel about Neptune moving into Pisces? Do you feel like that has anything to do with all the floods back east and all the rain? And
it certainly could. I'm not a meteorological astrologer. There are a few astrologers who specialize in that, and they're very good. But the main thing is to understand that in modern astrology, Neptune is often considered to be the ruler of Pisces, meaning the planet that is most like Pisces in its principles, and therefore it has a very strong influence there. So having Neptune in Pisces is like having 2 Neptunes.
right.
It's really piling it on. And Neptune wants us to be psychic and pick up what's going on psychically. And some of us are more used to that and better at it than others. Many people are uncomfortable with it, but they're going to be challenged to admit their psychic ability during the next few years as Neptune moves through there, which will be about 14 years, I believe.
Well, I have noticed that a lot of scientists are now getting into psychic situations and beliefs, and they're opening up a bit. Where myself, I think it's really funny because when I first started in my psychic work, 1965, I noticed that just mainly women were interested in it, not very many men. I can't say that anymore.
Nope.
Times are changing. I have so much enjoyed having you on our show today.
Thank you.
And it's been very, very interesting to me because I know enough about astrology to talk to you, or else probably I couldn't do it. Anyway, it's been good meeting you, and I want to thank our crew because their dedication is what makes this happen. And please remember the First Spiritual Church, we're any Sunday morning, so where angels come and so can you. And get some paper, some pencils, write down the phone number of the church. That's how you can call me if you want to get Jim's phone number from me. Please call, or else you can call me. I'm in the phone book also. Blessings to all of you watching, and thank you for tuning in, and goodbye for now, and keep watching. Bye-bye.